Mr. San Nicolas.
Again, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And as you know, I've always focused my advocacy, particularly during this crisis, on just making sure the territories are included. Just keep us included, and as long as we're included, that's already going to be above and beyond in terms of where we've been in the past. And I wanted to again thank you and thank our senior leadership for making sure that we have been included. And that brings me, though, Mr. Chairman, to my point with respect to the committee. Guam is receiving a record amount of federal dollars in order to be able to address the impacts of this COVID-19 situation. In order for our territories to be able to maintain the reputation necessary for us to be able to avail of these kind of resources in the future, it's important for us to make sure that we get the spending right when it comes to the utilization of these federal dollars. And at this time, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask if the committee could consider more of an oversight role with respect to how these monies are being deployed in the territories. I know the monies come from various sources. They come from appropriations, ways and means, energy and commerce, small business, financial services. But when it comes to the administration of the territories, that falls under us here at Natural Resources. And if our territories don't get the administration of these federal dollars right from the get-go, the outcome of any misspending could impact our impact us reputationally and have difficulties in the future. And so I know that Dr. Shea mentioned the need for transparency locally. I know that our colleague from Puerto Rico mentioned the need for transparency locally and the way the local government is administering the funds. We have a problem back on Guam, Mr. Chairman. There is a transparency issue. The governor is not being responsive even to local lawmakers. It's even been publicly stated by the governor that she does not need to answer to local lawmakers with respect to how she's spending these federal dollars. And they're at a point now where even the media is having to use Freedom of Information Act requests in order to just get basic answers. And then even those basic answers are being put off by the request for an extension, or even the statement that that comes out from the Freedom of Information Act being very contrary to what's already been publicly known. And so I need to beg the indulgence of the committee to help us find a solution on how we can, with our plenary responsibility here in Congress for the territories, ensure that these federal dollars going into our territories are going to be administered the way they need to be. And so I wanted to, I guess, yield to my colleague from Puerto Rico, our panelist from Puerto Rico, if he wants to elaborate on some of his transparency concerns, and then also follow up with Dr. Shea, if he would like to elaborate on some of his transparency concerns.
Thank you, Congressman. You're totally. Oh, wait. Yeah, am I on? Yeah. Thank you, Congressman. Totally correct. Puerto Rico, had basically a revolt in the last summer, 2019, because of the lack of transparency issues, and we peacefully marched, and the governor had to resign. Unfortunately, the current governor, as I mentioned with the education program, basically isn't being transparent. But we also have issues with our fiscal control board, which was imposed by the previous leadership of this committee. Because of our unique tax status, the $1,200 checks need to be a block grant to our Hacienda Department of Treasury. And then we need to submit a plan and guidelines that need to be approved by Treasury. Treasury hasn't approved those guidelines yet. The $1,200 checks haven't arrived. So the local government created a $500 check local stimulus, but the board, the fiscal board mandated by this committee is telling the governor she can't send over those checks until the $1,200 checks get to Puerto Rico. But again, our lockdown started on March 15th, and people are waiting too long. And we are still waiting for $20 billion to get there from the hurricane. And obviously, all those dollars require transparency. So we need radical transparency. We need Congress to provide oversight, and obviously to compel the government to act according to the law.
Dr. Shea, if you wanted to add.
Dr. Shea?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. Transparency, like I said, is very important. For example, our doctors and nurses, over the last 2 months, we had to go out and ask for donations for supplies, for face masks, for PPEs, doctors and nurses, we should be focused, not asking for donations. We should be asking ourselves that question. The supply should be provided by the government. For example, FEMA. We've asked FEMA to let us know what supplies do you have, what PPEs, what masks, what do you have? Let us know the amount so that if we do get donations, we don't duplicate what you already have. The answer we got is that those are above our pay grade, or hey, that's not information that we shared with the public, etc. Those are not transparent. So if FEMA is here on Guam right now, if they have container loads, make that public, because we need to know what's in there and what supplies are being. Don't tell us that, with the hospital, if you have zero supplies, then come and ask us. That's not right. If our supplies are down to 30 days, supply us with what you got, but don't hide those information from the public. As far as the governor's office goes, I think she has openly told the senators that she does not need to inform how the federal monies are being spent. I think that's wrong. I think a transparent government is what we want, and without transparency, there really is no trust in the leadership. So I think as the federal money comes in, every dollar of the 128 million or more, if we get any more, that every dollar should be accounted for, and that should be made public so that we know exactly how this government is spending their money. So I think that's all I have to add as far as transparency goes, but we should demand transparency. Absolutely.
Thank you. Let me very generally, Mr. San Nicolas, and to the folks that just spoke. One of the frustrations of distance governance, which we're doing right now via online and virtual, is the fact that the very important function of the House of Representatives, which is oversight and accountability, can't play fully out. And you hear about what happened to the small business in the payroll paycheck protection plan, who got the money, who didn't, and mom and pops and independents still waiting. You hear it about the distribution of masks. You hear about from Indian countries, they're still waiting in mainland to receive the support that they need to fight the pandemic. And so, I think accountability is something we need to stress. And in the areas of jurisdiction in which we have very direct jurisdiction, not only a plenary, but responsibility, Mr. San Nicolas pointed out, we should. And we need to, because that's the only way. Trillions of dollars are being spent, and there was the intention of the legislation is a good one. I don't trust this administration to do it equitably and fairly. I'll be blunt about that. And so the role of accountability by this House of Representatives is paramount. And the other area of jurisdiction is Indian country. Other area of jurisdiction is obviously the territories and the discussion today. And I think we need to take them seriously. And whether the format is online or whether at some point we're able to do that collectively as a committee, we need to. And if it ends up being online, we need to. And holding people accountable as to how the money was spent, because it's the greater public good that the intention of this money was. It wasn't meant as a supplement to supplant what a local budget should be doing, and it was meant to take care of those immediate relief needs before we even talk about recovery. And if it's not being used for those relief, if it isn't being used to build up capacity, and if it's not being used to test the maximum amount of people that is possible in order to get a good reading on when and how we reintroduce stability and normalcy, whatever that might be, into our communities, then it's not being used correctly. It's not being used right. And that's going to be a responsibility that I take seriously, and I know the committee chairs of all the subcommittees take as well. So, yeah, we need to pursue that. Is mechanism now? Do we do it online or do we do it in person? Either way, I would prefer in person, but I think it's going to end up being online pretty soon.